We humans have free will, but with that free will and that consciousness comes a certain element of pain. That freedom can be very painful. We don't know how to make a choice. Is this the right choice to take in this particular career path? There seems to be nothing really, truly guiding us.
They exist. You're just not looking enough. You're not spending the time. You don't have that desire for reaching it.
Now, there's this question that people have been asking famous people and friends for hundreds of years now. And the question is as follows. If you were stranded on a desert island and you could only have one book that you could take with you or have with you, what book would that be? Now, some people answer the Bible, which is a great answer. You know, this would be very inspiring and give you a lot of support during probably a very difficult time. Other people who want something maybe a little more entertaining but still inspiring would say Moby Dick or War and Peace. Well, when they asked the writer, the famous English writer, G.K. Chesterton, he said that he would take Thomas's Guide to Practical Shipbuilding. I actually happen to be one of the few people who's actually seen Thomas's Guide to Practical Shipbuilding. It's from the 19th century, late 19th century. I was in the British Museum. I went to the private collection. I actually saw it. And it's an amazing book. It's got incredible illustrations, beautifully. It's something you could spend hours reading. It happens to have a chapter in there that explains how you could build any seaworthy vessel from a few planks of wood, how you can construct it with virtually no tools, how you could make a mast and rigging from plant material, how you could launch this vessel, at what time of year to launch it, how to navigate using the stars and the North Star, an amazing book. So imagine you had this predicament. Which book could you take? If you had something like Tolstoy's War and Peace, it would certainly be more entertaining than Thomas's Guide to Practical Shipbuilding. But after you read it one time, two times, three times, you start to get sick of it. And as you on the island 3 years and 4 years, and you're getting more and more depressed and suicidal, you probably are going to stop reading it, and one night you're going to use it for firewood. Thomas's Guide, on the other hand, it might seem like a dull book. From the day one you're trapped on this desert island, you're filled with this incredible confidence and hope. You no longer feel like you're trapped on this island. You know that if you use this chapter, you can get yourself off the island. You can start building your own ship. It's going to take months, probably years. But as you're building this little vessel to escape from the island, you're learning a valuable skill, you're building confidence, you're feeling more and more excited about what's ahead. So to me, this is like the ultimate book. This isn't a book that you read for pleasure. In these circumstances, this book can literally transform your life, transform your circumstances, save you from the most miserable, despondent condition, and bring you back to civilization. So I naturally applaud the spirit of G.K. Chesterton's answer, his practical spirit. It's a practical spirit that informs all of my books. But I can go even further than that. I would say that my new book, Mastery, is my attempt to write Thomas's Guide for Practical Shipbuilding for the everyday world. It's a book that I don't want you to sit there and read for entertainment in some passive sort of sense. It is a book that I want you to use to literally transform your life. When we look at our lives and our career path, it generally goes like this. Enter an education system, and then somewhere around high school, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later, in the back of our minds, we become aware of the fact that we actually have to earn a living. And this is a very tough realization for some. Now, some people who find this realization a little too harsh, and it fills them with anxiety, they choose what I would call a direct path. They gravitate towards something like law or medicine, or go for an MBA, or some kind of obvious direct craft or skill where they feel they can make a lot of money quickly, something lucrative. But many more of us in life choose what I call an indirect path. So we enter the university system, we figure out a major that we think corresponds more or less to something that we like, and then suddenly we're thrown out into the real world to fend for ourselves. And we have to choose a particular career path that might suit us. But we can't choose anything that we like, and so a lot of our choice depends on what's out there, where we live, the connections that we have, where we can get some money together, or where we can find a position. And so we take that first step, that first important career step. And then what generally happens after 3 or 4 years, perhaps the job is no longer there, or we're tired and bored, and we have to make an adjustment in our career path, and we choose something else. Maybe something a little bit related, maybe something not really related. And then every 3 or 4 years, another adjustment, on and on and on. And if you were to lift yourself up and look at this career path over 10, 20, 30 years, you would see sort of this zigzagging motion where it goes, where the person ended up like 30 years later has very little relationship to where they started. Even people who take the direct path in life, the same scenario. I knew, for instance, this lawyer that I met in Los Angeles. He went into law because he actually thought it was an interesting field, and he intended to become perhaps a criminal prosecutor, a DA, and then get into a career in politics. And for reasons he couldn't really help, mostly because of his wife, etc., he found himself moving to Los Angeles, where he had to get a job as an entertainment lawyer, and he ended up in entertainment law, and here he was, like babying actors with their egos and movie directors, something he had never intended, and he was pretty unhappy. And he was consulting me to help rescue him from that. And I find that scenario over and over and over again in my consulting business. People who are in their 40s, and they say, I have no idea how I ended up where I am. I'm not unhappy, I'm not completely unsuccessful, but I never really intended to get in this career that I find myself in. It happened by some weird, random chain of events. Now, if you examine this way of how we look at our lives, we can make a few generalizations. A lot of the choices that happen in this career path are from external reasons. Where is the money? Who do we know? Where do we live? What are other people doing? A lot of these choices and this career path that we take is somewhat passive. It seems to depend on a lot of chance and good luck and opportunities that suddenly appear. And finally, we can say that we never really look at our overall life, at the overall pattern of our life. Instead, we're thinking in terms of blocks of 3 years or 4 years, or not even that, maybe months of, I got to get through past this obstacle, I got to get this job, and I'll think about the future later. There's no overall arching sense of a purpose, of a goal to our lives. We're very unique, very strange creatures. Animals are basically programmed. They're programmed to respond in a certain way to events in their environment. We humans have free will, a wonderful thing. We have consciousness. But with that free will and that consciousness comes a certain element of pain. That freedom can be very painful. Sometimes we don't know how to fill up our days. We don't know how to make a choice. What is it? Is this the right choice to take in this particular career path? Could there be something better? There seems to be nothing really, truly guiding us and telling us how we must work our lives. This lack of purpose that many of us have, this lack of a sense of a goal, is even worse in the modern world where things are changing so quickly. And I think it's actually the source of a lot of secret frustration and a depression that a lot of people have. Each human being, each one of you, was born completely unique. Your DNA never occurred in the past and will never again occur in the future. An incredible thought if you ever spend time to think about, to ponder that. The same thing could be said about your brain. Your brain is configured in a particular way that has never happened in the past, will never happen in the future. This uniqueness that you're born with is there's a purpose, there's a reason behind it. Our culture, who we are, depends on the diversity of people that exist within it, each person bringing their own personal skills, their own uniqueness to bear it within our culture, expressing all of these different skills and ideas, creating this kind of rich soil. It's why we celebrate a period in history like the Renaissance. So this uniqueness that you were born with is your purpose, is your fate, is your destiny. Now, how does this uniqueness that each one of you have, how does it manifest itself? It manifests itself beginning at the age of 3 or 4 years old. You probably can't remember it, but as a child, you were naturally drawn to certain things, to certain activities. You're very young, it's a pre-verbal thing. You're drawn to certain patterns, to certain ways of thinking, to rhythms, to music, perhaps to a physical activity. Albert Einstein, when he was 5 years old, his father gave him a compass, and he suddenly looked at this compass, and the idea that the needle would move according to this magnetism in the North Pole, it fascinated him that there was this invisible force that existed in the universe. From that moment on, all he could think about were these forces that you couldn't see but that acted upon the physical world. That was his uniqueness manifested at the age of 5. Anyway, as we get older, it becomes a little clearer what these natural inclinations are. I liken it to a voice inside our head. It's a metaphor. There's not literally a voice, at least I hope not. But there's like a voice. And it's saying, this is what you should be doing, Noman, or whoever it is. This is what you should be drawn to. This is what you were meant to accomplish. When you do it, you feel an ease, a kind of power. If it's playing the piano, it doesn't mean that you don't have to practice. There's still a lot of pain. But in doing it, you feel this kind of natural ease. It works. Whereas if you do something that doesn't fall within this wheelhouse, what you were meant to do, you experience the opposite. You experience a lot of resistance. This voice is telling you, this is what you're drawn to. This is what you should be doing.
So you're a detective looking in the interior of your childhood, of your early years, for those kinds of details. People will say, well, Robert, I don't have anything like that. I'm sorry, I'm lost. I can't remember anything like that. They exist. You're just not looking enough. You're not spending the time. You don't have that desire for reaching it. You're not writing every day in a notebook about what they could be. You're not looking hard enough. They are there. There are moments where you felt so excited by something you could barely control it, and there was a kind of a pleasure in it. Hopefully, if you're young, if you're in that golden range of 18 to 25 and you're kind of searching, you will go through this process in a deep way and you will find what that is, right? If you're older, the process is a little different and a little more difficult, but still very important. And the idea is, once discovered, you're going to have some adventure. You're going to explore. All right, I want to be a writer. Oh, okay, I want to get into music. Oh, I want to start my own business. You're not going to be so tunnel vision and just go into one job, into one thing. You're going to experiment. You're going to have some fun. You're going to have some adventures. You might travel. You might do things, but you're always kind of focused in that general direction. If you're a writer, you're reading books, right, et cetera, et cetera. If you're an entrepreneur, you're starting little businesses here and you're learning about them. By the time you're 30, you've tried 4 or 5 different things, and now you're ready for some kind of creative explosion, right? But this is the key thing in your life. And it's once you discover it, everything else will open up for you. So just learn the lesson of the most important thing that you can do in your life is to know who you are, really, to sum this all up in simply. To know what makes you different, what makes you unique, what you love that's different from what other people love, right? And I tell people, when you're older, continually create lists of things you hate and things you love, and look through them and analyze them and go, is this because what other people are telling me to hate and what other people are telling me to love, or does it come truly from within? So this process of finding your life's task is not just about your career. It's also about your mental health, about discovering who you are, what makes you unique, so you can become acquainted with your own desires, your own impulses, and not so controlled by what other people are doing and thinking.